Good morning, beloved friends. Today, as the sun rises to greet a new day, we gather with grateful hearts and open spirits. We come carrying our hopes, our burdens, our victories, and our unanswered questions. Yet above all these things, we come with faith. This morning prayer is an invitation to pause and remember that peace is still possible, joy is still available, and God's faithfulness remains unshaken. In a world that often rushes us into worry and uncertainty, we choose to stand in the quiet assurance that we are not alone. The same God who guided us through yesterday walks beside us today and prepares the path before us tomorrow. His love does not weaken, His promises do not fade, and His mercy greets us fresh every morning. As we begin this day, let us lift our hearts in prayer. Embrace the gift of peace. Welcome the strength of joy, and open ourselves to experiencing the faithfulness of God in every moment. May this morning be a reminder that hope still rises, grace still flows, and God's presence is still working in our lives. Let us pray. The gift of a new morning. There is something sacred about the arrival of a new morning. Before the noise of the day begins its steady march, before the demands of life call our names, there is a holy moment when the earth seems to pause and breathe. The dawn does not rush. It does not force its way into the world. It arrives with quiet confidence, spreading light across the horizon and reminding us that darkness, no matter how long it lingers, never has the final word. This morning, as we gather our thoughts and lift our hearts toward God, we are invited to recognize a profound truth. This day is a gift. It is not something we earned. It is not something we purchased. It is not something guaranteed. It is a gift wrapped in mercy, tied with grace, and delivered by the faithful hand of God. Each new morning carries a message from heaven. It whispers to the weary, begin again. It speaks to the discouraged, do not give up. It tells the brokenhearted, healing is still possible. And it reminds those who have forgotten their worth that they are still seen, still loved, and still held by the Creator of all things. Many of us wake carrying the weight of yesterday. We remember mistakes we wish we could undo, words we wish we had not spoken, opportunities we failed to seize, and wounds that have not yet healed. We sometimes allow yesterday to follow us into today like a shadow. Yet God, in His wisdom and compassion, gives us the morning as a gentle invitation to release what has passed and embrace what is possible. The sunrise does not ask permission from the night. It simply comes. The light stretches across the sky and declares that a new chapter has begun. In the same way, God offers us this day not as a continuation of our failures, but as an opportunity to experience His renewing power. Think about the miracle of waking up. It is so common that we often overlook its wonder. We open our eyes, draw a breath, and step into another day. Yet every breath is evidence of God's sustaining love. Every heartbeat is a testimony to His care. Every moment we are given is proof that His purpose for our lives is not yet finished. There are people who began yesterday with dreams but did not live to see today. There are voices that were heard last evening that are silent this morning. There are hands that worked, embraced loved ones, and reached toward tomorrow but will never hold another sunrise. We do not reflect on these truths to create fear. We reflect on them to awaken gratitude. Gratitude changes the way we see life. When we understand that today is a gift, we stop treating it as an obligation and begin embracing it as a blessing. We stop asking, what do I have to do today? And begin asking, what can I do with this precious gift God has placed in my hands? A grateful heart sees possibility where others see limitation. A grateful spirit recognizes beauty in ordinary moments. It finds joy in the laughter of a child, comfort in the embrace of a friend, wonder in the song of a bird, and hope in the promise of a new beginning. The gift of a new morning reminds us that God is a God of fresh starts. Human beings often keep records of mistakes. We remember disappointments. We replay failures. We carry regrets. But God specializes in redemption. He takes what is broken and begins to restore it. He takes what is wounded and begins to heal it. He takes what appears lost and reveals possibilities we could never have imagined. Perhaps someone listening today feels discouraged. Maybe the road has been long and difficult. Maybe prayers seem unanswered. Maybe the future appears uncertain. If that is your story, let this morning speak hope into your spirit. The God who brought you safely through the night is the same God who will walk with you through this day. The God who carried you through past struggles has not abandoned you now. This new morning is evidence that your story is still being written. There are pages yet to be filled with unexpected blessings. There are chapters yet to reveal victories you cannot currently see. There are moments ahead when you will look back on this season and recognize that God was working even when you could not perceive His hand. The beauty of a new morning is that it refuses to be imprisoned by yesterday. The sun rises whether yesterday was filled with triumph or disappointment. It rises whether we succeeded or failed. It rises whether we laughed or cried. It rises because God, in His faithfulness, continues to offer humanity another opportunity to grow, to love, to learn, and to trust. What a remarkable expression of divine mercy. Every morning God says, in effect, here is another chance. Here is another day. Here is another opportunity to walk with me. And what we do with that opportunity matters. We can spend the day dwelling on what went wrong, or we can move forward in faith. We can focus on fear, or we can embrace hope. We can carry bitterness, or we can choose forgiveness. We can live as though life is a burden, or we can celebrate it as a gift. The choice belongs to us. When we recognize the sacredness of a new morning, we begin to approach life differently. We become more patient. We become more compassionate. We become more aware of the people around us. We understand that every person we encounter is also living through joys and struggles we may never fully understand. A new morning invites us not only to receive God's grace, but also to share it. It calls us to speak words that heal rather than harm. It encourages us to extend kindness where there is loneliness. It challenges us to bring light into places overshadowed by despair. In doing so, we become reflections of the very grace that has been extended to us. Today, before the hours unfold and the responsibilities of life demand our attention, let us pause and thank God for this gift. Let us thank Him for the breath in our lungs, the strength in our bodies, the hope in our hearts, and the opportunities waiting before us. Let us thank Him for His mercy that met us when we woke. Let us thank Him for His faithfulness that remained constant through the night. Let us thank Him for His love that continues to surround us, even when we are unaware of it. And let us step into this day with confidence. Not confidence in our own abilities alone, but confidence in the God who guides our steps. Confidence in the God who opens doors no one can shut. Confidence in the God whose plans are greater than our fears and whose promises are stronger than our doubts. This morning is a gift. It is a gift of grace. It is a gift of possibility. It is a gift of hope. And as we receive it with grateful hearts, may we walk forward knowing that the God who created this beautiful morning has already prepared the blessings, lessons, and opportunities that await us within it. May we welcome this day with joy, embrace it with gratitude, and live it with faith. Praying for inner peace. There is a kind of peace the world speaks about, and there is a kind of peace that comes from God. The peace of the world often depends upon circumstances. It arrives when everything is going well. It settles in when problems are solved, when relationships are thriving, when finances are secure, and when the future appears predictable. Yet the moment difficulties arise, that peace can disappear like mist before the morning sun. But the peace God offers is different. It is deeper than favorable circumstances. It is stronger than uncertainty. It is able to stand in the middle of life's storms and remain unmoved. It is the quiet assurance that even when we do not understand what is happening around us, God remains present, faithful, and in control. Many people are searching for peace today. Some are carrying worries they have shared with no one. Some are struggling beneath responsibilities that seem too heavy to bear. Others are facing decisions that leave them uncertain about which path to take. There are hearts troubled by grief, minds crowded with anxiety, and spirits worn thin by disappointment. The truth is that life can be demanding. There are seasons when challenges arrive one after another. Just when we think we have overcome one obstacle, another appears on the horizon. At times we may feel as though we are carrying the weight of the world upon our shoulders. Yet this morning prayer invites us to remember something important. We were never created to carry every burden alone. God did not design us to live in constant worry. He did not intend for fear to become the permanent resident of our hearts. He did not create us to spend our days imprisoned by anxiety about tomorrow. Instead, He invites us to bring our concerns to Him in prayer. Prayer is more than speaking words into the air. It is an act of trust. It is the courageous decision to place our burdens into hands stronger than our own. It is the recognition that while we may not have all the answers, we know the one who does. When we pray, something remarkable happens. The circumstances around us may not change immediately. The challenges may still exist. The unanswered questions may remain. Yet within us a transformation begins. Prayer shifts our focus. It turns our eyes away from fear and toward faith. It moves our attention from problems to possibilities. It reminds us that God's power is greater than any obstacle we face. The world often teaches us that strength means carrying everything by ourselves. It praises self-sufficiency and independence. It tells us that asking for help is weakness. But spiritual wisdom teaches a different lesson. True strength is found in surrender. True courage is found in trust. True peace is discovered when we acknowledge our need for God and allow Him to carry what we cannot. How many nights have people spent awake because their minds refuse to rest? How many mornings have begun with anxiety already waiting at the door? How many precious moments have been stolen by worry about things that may never happen? Fear has a way of demanding attention. It whispers worst-case scenarios. It magnifies problems. It convinces us that we are alone in our struggles. But God's peace speaks with a different voice. It reminds us that we have survived difficult days before. It reminds us that God's faithfulness has carried us through challenges we once thought impossible. It reminds us that the same God who guided us yesterday remains with us today. Inner peace does not come from knowing everything that will happen tomorrow. It comes from knowing who holds tomorrow. That truth changes everything. When we place our confidence in God's character, we discover that uncertainty loses much of its power over us. We begin to understand that while we cannot control every circumstance, we can trust the one who reigns above every circumstance. Peace is not the absence of trouble. Peace is the presence of God within trouble. It is the calm center in the midst of the storm. It is the steady heartbeat of faith when everything around us seems uncertain. Think of the ocean. On the surface, waves may crash and winds may roar. Yet deep beneath the surface, there is stillness. There is calm. There is stability. God desires to create that same stillness within our hearts. The surface of life may become turbulent. Unexpected challenges may arise. Disappointments may come. Yet beneath it all, His peace can remain steady and secure. This inner peace is not denial. It does not pretend problems do not exist. It does not ignore pain or suffering. Instead, it acknowledges reality while refusing to surrender hope. It says this situation is difficult, but God is faithful. It says, I do not know how everything will work out, but I trust the one who does. It says, I may feel afraid, but fear will not have the final word. There is tremendous freedom in releasing what we cannot control. Much of our anxiety comes from trying to manage outcomes that are beyond our reach. We attempt to solve tomorrow's problems before tomorrow arrives. We replay yesterday's mistakes as though revisiting them could somehow change them. Yet peace invites us into the present moment. It reminds us that God provides grace for today. Not next week, not next month. Today, the breath we are taking right now is evidence of His sustaining power. The opportunities before us today are gifts from His hand. The strength we need for this moment is available through His presence. When we pray for inner peace, we are not asking God to remove every challenge from our lives. We are asking Him to anchor our hearts so deeply in His love that challenges no longer determine our sense of security. That kind of peace transforms us. It changes how we respond to adversity. Instead of panic, we choose prayer. Instead of despair, we choose hope. Instead of surrendering to fear, we stand upon faith. People around us notice the difference. They see calm where they expected anxiety. They see confidence where they expected worry. They see hope where they expected discouragement. And through our lives, they catch a glimpse of God's sustaining grace. Our world desperately needs people who carry peace. Not superficial positivity, not empty optimism, but genuine peace rooted in faith. Every day we encounter individuals who are fighting battles we cannot see. A kind word may be the encouragement they desperately need. A patient response may become a source of healing. A peaceful spirit may remind someone that hope still exists. When God's peace fills our hearts, it overflows into the lives of others. We become instruments of comfort. We become voices of encouragement. We become reminders that God's presence is real. As this day begins, perhaps there are concerns weighing heavily upon your mind. Perhaps there are situations you cannot fix. Perhaps there are questions you cannot answer. Perhaps there are burdens you have carried for far too long. Today you do not have to carry them alone. Bring them before God. Place them in His capable hands. Trust Him with what troubles you. Trust Him with what frightens you. Trust Him with what confuses you. Trust Him with what lies ahead. Allow His peace to settle over your heart like gentle rain upon thirsty ground. Allow His presence to quiet the noise of fear. Allow His love to remind you that you are never alone, for the God who created the heavens and the earth is attentive to your prayers. The God who knows every star by name knows your needs as well. The God whose faithfulness has endured throughout generations remains faithful today. And because He is faithful, you can rest. Because He is present, you can trust. Because He is good, you can hope. Because He is God, you can have peace. So as this morning unfolds, walk forward with confidence. Let prayer become your first response rather than your last resort. Let faith become stronger than fear. Let gratitude become louder than worry. And let the peace of God guard your heart, steady your mind, and guide your steps throughout this day. May you carry that peace wherever you go. May it strengthen you when challenges arise. May it comfort you when uncertainty appears. And may it remind you again and again that no matter what this day holds, God holds you. There is a beautiful truth that every soul must learn sooner or later. Joy and happiness are not the same thing. Happiness often arrives as a visitor. It comes when circumstances are favorable, when prayers are answered exactly as we hoped, when relationships flourish, when opportunities appear, and when life unfolds according to our plans. Yet happiness can be fragile. It can disappear with a single disappointment, a painful phone call, an unexpected setback, or a difficult season. Joy is different. Joy is deeper. Joy is stronger. Joy is not dependent upon what is happening around us because its roots reach far beneath the surface of our circumstances. It grows from faith. It is nourished by gratitude. It is sustained by the confidence that God remains faithful regardless of what we face. The world often tells us that joy is something we must pursue. It encourages us to search for it in achievements, possessions, recognition, status, or success. Yet countless people have discovered that even after obtaining everything they thought they wanted, their hearts remained restless. Why? Because true joy is not found in what we possess. It is found in what possesses our hearts. When our hearts are anchored in God's love, joy becomes more than a passing emotion. It becomes a way of living. It becomes a lens through which we view life. It becomes a steady light that continues to shine even when dark clouds gather overhead. Every one of us knows something about difficult seasons. We know what it feels like to wait for answers that seem delayed. We know the ache of disappointment. We know the sting of loss. We know the uncertainty of standing before circumstances we cannot control. Life has a way of testing our strength and challenging our faith. There are moments when the road becomes steep and the journey feels longer than we expected. There are days when tears arrive before words. There are nights when sleep seems distant because worry has occupied our thoughts. Yet even in those moments, joy remains possible. Not because pain is absent, not because problems have vanished, but because God's presence remains. One of the greatest gifts God gives His children is the ability to experience joy in places where the world expects despair. This joy does not ignore suffering. It does not pretend everything is perfect. Rather, it recognizes that even in imperfect situations, God is still working. Joy says, I may not understand this season, but I trust God's purpose. Joy says, this challenge is real, but God's power is greater. Joy says, I am hurting, but I am not hopeless. Joy says, the story is not over yet. How powerful those words can become. The story is not over yet. Many people are tempted to judge their lives based on a single difficult chapter. They experience disappointment and conclude that hope has ended. They encounter failure and believe their future is ruined. They walk through loss and assume joy has permanently departed. But God is a God of continuing stories. Again and again, He takes what appears broken and creates something beautiful. He takes what seems impossible and reveals new possibilities. He transforms endings into beginnings and obstacles into opportunities for growth. The presence of difficulty does not mean the absence of God. In fact, some of life's deepest lessons and greatest blessings emerge during seasons we would never have chosen for ourselves. When we look back over our lives, many of us discover that the moments which strengthened our faith were not always the easiest moments. They were often the moments that required us to trust God more deeply. They were the seasons that taught us perseverance, compassion, humility, courage, and gratitude. Joy grows in those places. It develops when we learn to trust God beyond our understanding. It matures when we choose gratitude despite uncertainty. It strengthens when we refuse to allow hardship to define us. The human spirit possesses a remarkable capacity for resilience. God has placed within us the ability to rise after setbacks, to hope after disappointment, and to continue moving forward even when circumstances suggest we should quit. That resilience is closely connected to joy. Joy reminds us that our present circumstances are not the final measure of our lives. A difficult day is not a difficult destiny. A painful season is not a permanent condition. A setback is not a final defeat. God's plans extend beyond what we can currently see. There are blessings being prepared that we do not yet recognize. There are doors that will open at the right time. There are answers that will come in ways we never expected. There are victories that are quietly developing behind the scenes of our lives. Joy allows us to wait with expectation rather than despair. It teaches us to look toward the future with hope instead of fear. It reminds us that God's faithfulness has not expired simply because our timetable differs from His. Consider the beauty of a flower emerging after a long winter. For months, the ground appears lifeless. Cold winds blow. The landscape seems barren. Yet beneath the surface, something is happening. Roots are growing. Preparation is taking place. Life is developing where no one can see it. Then, in the proper season, beauty emerges. Many of us are living in seasons where growth is taking place beneath the surface. We may not yet see the results. We may not yet understand the process. We may not yet recognize the purpose. But God is still working. And because He is working, we can choose joy. Choosing joy is not a passive act. It is an intentional decision. Every day we are presented with countless opportunities to focus on what is wrong. News reports highlight conflict. Conversations often emphasize problems. Social media frequently encourages comparison. Fear competes for our attention at every turn. Yet joy invites us to focus differently. It calls us to notice blessings we might otherwise overlook. The breath in our lungs, the people who love us, the opportunities before us, the lessons we are learning, the strength we have gained, the grace that has carried us, and the faithfulness of God that continues day after day. Gratitude and joy walk hand in hand. The more grateful we become, the more joy we discover. When we pause to appreciate simple gifts, our perspective begins to change. We realize that even during difficult seasons, life still contains beauty. There is still goodness to celebrate. There are still reasons to hope. Joy also transforms how we interact with others. A joyful spirit becomes a source of encouragement. It brings light into heavy situations. It offers hope to discouraged hearts. It reminds weary people that better days are possible. Every one of us has encountered individuals whose presence lifted a room. They were not joyful because their lives were perfect. They were joyful because they had learned to focus on God's goodness rather than their difficulties. Their joy became contagious. Their hope inspired others. Their faith strengthened those around them. God calls us to become those kinds of people. People who carry joy into workplaces. People who bring encouragement into homes. People who spread kindness into communities. People whose confidence in God's faithfulness inspires others to keep believing. This does not mean we never experience sadness. Even the strongest believers have moments of grief. Even the most faithful hearts experience disappointment. Even the most hopeful spirits encounter seasons of struggle. Joy does not eliminate those emotions. It simply refuses to let them have the final word. Joy acknowledges pain but continues trusting. Joy recognizes difficulty but continues believing. Joy sees uncertainty but continues hoping. And that kind of joy becomes a testimony. It demonstrates that our confidence rests not in circumstances but in God. As we begin this day, perhaps some among us are facing challenges that feel overwhelming. Perhaps there are unanswered prayers. Perhaps there are unexpected burdens. Perhaps there are situations that seem beyond resolution. Yet this morning offers a gentle invitation. Choose joy. Choose to believe that God is still working. Choose to trust that His plans remain good. Choose to remember His faithfulness. Choose gratitude over complaint. Choose hope over despair. Choose faith over fear. Not because every problem has been solved. Not because every question has been answered. Not because every burden has been removed. But because God remains who He has always been. Faithful, loving, merciful, present, powerful, trustworthy. And when our hearts rest in those truths, joy becomes possible regardless of circumstances. So walk into this day with your head lifted high and your spirit anchored in hope. Let joy accompany you into every conversation. Let joy strengthen you through every challenge. Let joy remind you that God's goodness is greater than your difficulties. And may your life become a living testimony that when faith is stronger than fear and gratitude is greater than complaint, joy can flourish in every season. For this is the gift God offers His children. Not a life free from challenges, but a joy that remains steadfast through them all. A joy that survives storms. A joy that outlasts disappointments. A joy that rises each morning with renewed strength. A joy rooted in the unchanging faithfulness of God. There is a sacred strength that comes from remembering. In a world that moves quickly and constantly urges us toward the next task, the next goal, the next challenge, we often forget to look back. We become so focused on what is still missing that we lose sight of what God has already done. We become so concerned about the road ahead that we fail to appreciate the miles we have already traveled by His grace. Yet there is wisdom in remembering. There is healing in remembering. There is hope in remembering. For when we remember God's past faithfulness, we discover fresh courage for today's journey. Life has a way of presenting us with seasons that test our confidence. There are moments when uncertainty stands before us like a mountain. There are days when our prayers seem to linger unanswered. There are nights when fear attempts to convince us that we are alone. It is during those moments that memory becomes a gift. Not the kind of memory that keeps us trapped in regret or sorrow, but the kind that reminds us of God's goodness. The kind that recalls how He carried us through difficulties we once thought impossible. The kind that brings to mind the doors He opened, the strength He provided, and the blessings He poured into our lives when we needed them most. Each one of us carries a testimony. Some testimonies are dramatic and obvious. Others are quiet and deeply personal. Some can be told in a crowded room. Others are known only to the individual and to God. But every person who has walked with God for any length of time has witnessed His faithfulness. Perhaps there was a season when you did not know how you would make it through. The resources seemed insufficient. The answers seemed distant. The future appeared uncertain. Yet somehow, provision arrived, strength appeared, help came, and what once looked impossible became possible. At the time, you may not have fully understood how it happened. But now, looking back, you can see the fingerprints of God upon the situation. You can see His guidance. You can see His protection. You can see His mercy. You can see His faithfulness. The human heart has a tendency to forget blessings while remembering burdens. We remember disappointments with remarkable clarity. We replay painful conversations. We revisit mistakes. We hold tightly to worries. Yet the blessings of God can sometimes pass before us without receiving the attention they deserve. This morning invites us to reverse that pattern. Instead of focusing solely on what is troubling us today, let us remember what God has already done. Remember the prayers He answered. Remember the obstacles He helped you overcome. Remember the seasons He carried you through. Remember the moments when hope seemed distant but arrived anyway. Remember the times when strength appeared just when you needed it most. Remember the unexpected blessings. Remember the doors that opened. Remember the healing that came. Remember the friendships He provided. Remember the lessons He taught. Remember the grace He extended. The act of remembering changes us. It shifts our perspective. It strengthens our faith. It reminds us that the God who helped us before has not changed. The challenges may be different today. The circumstances may have shifted. The questions may be new. But God remains the same. His love has not diminished. His power has not weakened. His wisdom has not failed. His faithfulness has not expired. What comfort there is in that truth. Human promises are sometimes broken. Human strength sometimes fades. Human understanding is limited. But God's faithfulness extends across generations. It remains steady through changing seasons. It survives every storm. It endures every challenge. When we remember God's past faithfulness, we are not simply revisiting history. We are building confidence for the future. Imagine standing at the edge of a river, uncertain whether you can cross. Fear begins to whisper. Doubt begins to rise, yet then you remember every river God has already helped you cross. You remember previous challenges. You remember past victories. You remember moments when He provided a way forward. Suddenly, your perspective changes. The current challenge may still be real, but it no longer appears impossible. Faith begins to grow. Hope begins to rise. Confidence begins to return, because memory reminds you that God's record of faithfulness is already established. There is something powerful about taking inventory of God's goodness, not occasionally, not only during special occasions, but regularly. Every blessing becomes a reminder. Every answered prayer becomes evidence. Every act of provision becomes a testimony. Every moment of grace becomes a reason for gratitude. The more we recognize God's faithfulness, the more difficult it becomes for fear to dominate our heart. Fear says, what if things do not work out? Faith responds, God has brought me through before. Fear says, what if I am not strong enough? Faith responds, God has strengthened me before. Fear says, what if I fail? Faith responds, God has guided me before. Fear says, what if I am alone? Faith responds, God has never left me before. That is the power of remembering. It transforms fear into trust. It transforms anxiety into confidence. It transforms uncertainty into hope. Many of the blessings we enjoy today were once prayers. Think about that for a moment. The things we now consider ordinary may have once seemed extraordinary. The opportunities we now take for granted may have once been deeply desired. The relationships we now cherish may have once been hopes we carried in our hearts. The provision we now depend upon may have once been the answer to a desperate prayer. Yet over time, familiarity can cause us to overlook the miracle. We become accustomed to blessings. We stop noticing them. We stop celebrating them. We stop thanking God for them. This morning calls us back to gratitude. It reminds us to pause and recognize how far God has brought us. You are not where you used to be. You have survived challenges that once seemed overwhelming. You have grown in wisdom. You have gained strength. You have learned lessons. You have experienced grace. And through it all, God has remained faithful. Not because life has been perfect. Not because every prayer was answered immediately. Not because every journey was easy. But because God stayed with you through it all. Sometimes His faithfulness appeared as provision. Sometimes it appeared as protection. Sometimes it appeared as correction. Sometimes it appeared as comfort. Sometimes it appeared as patience while He taught you lessons you could learn no other way. Yet in every season, His faithfulness remained. One of the greatest dangers during difficult times is forgetting previous victories. When we focus exclusively on present challenges, we can begin to believe that God has abandoned us. We can become discouraged. We can lose perspective. We can allow temporary circumstances to overshadow permanent truths. That is why remembering matters. It keeps our hearts anchored. It reminds us that God's character is consistent. It teaches us that present difficulties do not erase past faithfulness. And if God was faithful yesterday, He can be trusted today. If He guided us before, He can guide us again. If He provided before, He can provide again. If He strengthened us before, He can strengthen us again. The same God who walked with us through previous storms is walking with us now. The same God who opened doors before is still opening doors. The same God who answered prayers before still hears every prayer we pray. This truth becomes a source of tremendous peace. It allows us to face uncertainty with confidence. Not confidence in ourselves, but confidence in God. Not confidence in our abilities, but confidence in His faithfulness. As this day begins, perhaps there are areas of your life where answers have not yet appeared. Perhaps there are concerns weighing heavily upon your heart. Perhaps there are situations that seem beyond your control. Before you allow worry to take root, take a moment to remember. Remember how God carried you through previous seasons. Remember how He provided when resources seemed scarce. Remember how He comforted you during sorrow. Remember how He guided you through confusion. Remember how He strengthened you during weakness. Remember how He remained faithful when circumstances suggested otherwise. Let those memories become stepping stones for your faith. Let them remind you that God's story in your life is not finished. Let them strengthen your confidence in His promises. Let them encourage your heart. For the God who is faithful then is faithful now. The God who answered prayers then still hears prayers today. The God who carried you then still carries you now. And the God who blessed you in the past is already at work preparing blessings for the future. So walk into this day with gratitude in your heart. Carry your memories of God's goodness as treasures. Let His past faithfulness become the foundation of your present confidence. And whenever fear attempts to overshadow your hope, remember His goodness. Remember His mercy. Remember His provision. Remember His love. Remember His faithfulness. For those memories are more than reflections of yesterday. They are promises that the God who has never failed you before will remain faithful to every tomorrow. There is something profoundly human about wanting to know what comes next. We want certainty. We want guarantees. We want to see the entire road before we take the first step. We want answers before questions arise, solutions before problems appear, and assurance before challenges arrive. We long to know how every chapter will unfold, how every prayer will be answered, and how every difficulty will resolve itself. Yet life rarely unfolds that way. More often than not, we are given just enough light for the next step. Not the entire journey, not the complete map. Just enough grace, just enough wisdom, and just enough strength for today. And perhaps that is by God's design. For if we could see every twist and turn ahead, we might place our confidence in our own understanding rather than in Him. If we knew every detail of tomorrow, we might forget our need for divine guidance today. But God in His wisdom invites us into a relationship of trust. Trust is one of the most beautiful expressions of faith. It is choosing to believe even when we cannot see. It is moving forward even when the outcome remains uncertain. It is placing our lives into God's hands and believing that those hands are strong enough, wise enough, and loving enough to lead us exactly where we need to go. Every morning presents us with a journey. Some journeys are ordinary. Others are challenging challenging. Some days unfold according to our plans. Others surprise us in ways we never expected. But regardless of what awaits us, the invitation remains the same. Trust God for today's journey. Notice that the invitation is for today, not next month, not next year. Today. There is a freedom that comes when we stop trying to carry tomorrow's burdens before tomorrow arrives. Many people exhaust themselves worrying about events that have not happened. They spend precious energy imagining problems that may never come. They become overwhelmed by possibilities, fears, and uncertainties that exist only in their minds. Meanwhile, today's blessings go unnoticed. Today's opportunities are missed. Today's grace remains unopened. God gives us strength for today. He provides wisdom for today's decisions. He offers peace for today's challenges. And when tomorrow arrives, He will provide what is needed then as well. One of the greatest acts of faith is learning to live one day at a time. This does not mean we abandon planning or responsibility. It means we refuse to allow future concerns to steal present peace. It means we trust that God already stands in the future we fear. He has seen every challenge. He knows every need. He understands every obstacle. Nothing catches Him by surprise. What a comforting thought. The situations that worry us are already known to God. The questions we cannot answer are not mysteries to Him. The roads that appear uncertain to us are perfectly visible to Him. We walk by faith because He sees what we cannot. Life often feels like traveling through unfamiliar territory. There are seasons when we know exactly where we are going. Everything appears clear and predictable. Then there are seasons when the path becomes less obvious. Unexpected changes occur. Doors close. New opportunities emerge. Circumstances shift. And suddenly we find ourselves asking, God, where are you leading me? It is in those moments that trust becomes essential. Trust says, I may not understand the path, but I trust the guide. Trust says, I cannot see around the corner, but God can. Trust says, I do not have all the answers, but I know the one who does. Trust does not require complete understanding. In fact, trust often begins where understanding ends. There are aspects of life we will never fully explain. There are delays we will not immediately comprehend. There are circumstances that challenge our assumptions and stretch our faith. Yet even when understanding is absent, trust remains possible. Why? Because trust is rooted not in circumstances but in character. When we trust God, we are trusting His character. We are trusting His goodness. We are trusting His wisdom. We are trusting His faithfulness. We are trusting His love. And His character remains constant even when circumstances change. The weather changes. Seasons change. People change. Situations change. But God remains the same. His promises remain secure. His love remains steadfast. His faithfulness remains dependable. His presence remains near. That consistency becomes an anchor for our souls. Every one of us has faced moments when life seemed uncertain. Perhaps there was a time when resources appeared insufficient. Perhaps there was a season when a relationship ended unexpectedly. Perhaps there was a period when illness, grief, disappointment, or failure knocked at the door. In those moments, we often discover that God's strength becomes most visible when our own strength feels insufficient. What we could not carry alone, He helped us bear. What we could not overcome by ourselves, He helped us endure. What we thought would break us became an opportunity to experience His sustaining grace. Looking back, many of us can see that some of our greatest blessings arrived disguised as challenges. Some of our deepest lessons emerged from struggles. Some of our strongest faith developed during uncertainty. And some of our clearest experiences of God's presence occurred during seasons when we needed Him most. That realization strengthens trust. It reminds us that God's work is often taking place behind the scenes. Even when we cannot see progress, He is working. Even when we do not understand, He is guiding. Even when we feel uncertain, He remains faithful. Trusting God for today's journey also means surrendering control. Now, surrender is not a popular word in our culture. We are encouraged to control outcomes, manage every detail, and rely solely upon ourselves. Yet there comes a point when wisdom teaches us that some things are beyond our control. We cannot control every circumstance. We cannot control every person's choices. We cannot control every outcome, but we can control where we place our trust. And when we place that trust in God, we discover peace. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means giving over. It means releasing the burden of trying to carry responsibilities that belong to God alone. It means acknowledging that His wisdom exceeds ours. It means accepting that His timing may differ from ours. It means believing that His plans are ultimately good even when we cannot yet see their full purpose. There is remarkable peace in that surrender. Imagine carrying a heavy suitcase for miles. Your arms ache, your shoulders grow weary, the burden becomes increasingly difficult to bear. Then someone stronger comes alongside you and offers to carry it. The burden itself has not changed, but the weight upon your shoulders has. That is what happens when we trust God. The circumstances may not immediately disappear. The challenges may still exist, yet the burden becomes lighter because we are no longer carrying it alone. God walks with us. He strengthens us. He guides us. He sustains us. And His presence changes everything. Trust also allows us to embrace today's opportunities. When fear dominates our hearts, we often hesitate. We hold back. We avoid risks. We resist growth. But trust gives us courage. It enables us to step forward even when certainty is unavailable. It allows us to pursue our calling. It encourages us to serve others. It inspires us to live with confidence and purpose, because we know that our lives are held in God's hands, and there is no safer place to be. As this day unfolds, there will be moments that require trust. Some decisions may seem small. Others may feel significant. Some situations will be familiar. Others may challenge you. Yet in every moment, remember this simple truth. You do not walk alone. God goes before you. He walks beside you. He remains behind you. His presence surrounds you. His wisdom guides you. His strength upholds you. His love sustains you. The journey of today may not be perfect. There may be unexpected detours. There may be obstacles. There may be disappointments. But there will also be grace. There will be opportunities. There will be lessons. There will be blessings. And through it all, God will remain faithful. So as you step into this day, do not be consumed by tomorrow. Do not allow future worries to overshadow present blessings. Do not let uncertainty rob you of peace. Instead, place your trust in God. Trust Him with your plans. Trust Him with your family. Trust Him with your work. Trust Him with your dreams. Trust Him with your fears. Trust Him with your unanswered questions. Trust Him with every part of your journey. For the God who has carried you this far will not abandon you now. The God who opened doors before can open doors again. The God who provided yesterday can provide today. The God who guided you through past seasons can guide you through this one. And when evening comes and you look back upon this day, may you recognize His hand in every step. May you see evidence of His goodness. May you experience the comfort of His presence. And may your heart rest in the assurance that trusting God for today's journey is not merely an act of faith. It is the pathway to peace, strength, and hope. Walk forward, beloved. The road may be unknown to you, but it is fully known to God. And that is more than enough.